All right, so let's start the story here. Apple's privacy campaign has been in the spotlight recently, at least in the last, few weeks, because of a class action lawsuits that have been filed against the company over allegations that it lies to consumers about their privacy measures to gain an edge on the competitors that actually would love to have access to your data as well. Now, while actually harvesting massive amounts of data is what they're accused of, the suits, which were filed in California and in New York federal court, accuse Apple of breach of implied contract, invasion of privacy, unjust treatment, unfair competition in the California case. And just to be clear, unjust treatment is also referred to as unjust enrichment. Apple unveiled privacy changes going back to 2021 that required apps to obtain user permission to track their activity across other apps and websites, which makes a lot of sense and gives you that warm, glowy feeling inside. But the company assured users that the apps can't access the system as far as the advertiser identifier, or the IDFA, and it can't collect yours or your device's information, like your email address and similar types of things, phone number, etc., etc. This feature is specifically called app tracking transparency, and it has had a dramatic impact on the ad industry, especially when you look at entities like Meta and all of their companies like Facebook, Instagram, etc., etc. And that has actually caused them to lose a lot of revenue. In fact, Meta is actually claiming about $10 billion due to this recent update. Enter into the equation these lawsuits and their claims, that despite representations that are being made by Apple, they continue to collect your data and mine to facilitate, dissemination, or to take advantage of it for ad revenue purposes. Well, they're still intercepting that particular data and not allowing access to third party, which of course misrepresents their statements about user privacy. They accuse Apple of deceiving the user specifically into believing that their data is protected, and by turning off the app's access to that data, they themselves, Apple in this case, is actually collecting and exploiting the data anyway. Looking at your browsing history, they're looking at your communications, and of course any of the other personal identifiers that are associated with your phone or any of the apps within Apple's sphere, and etc., etc. It's a little bit frustrating and it's very alarming, and I would say that with the companies that are bringing this suit, they're probably right on the money, because they're a little frustrated of having to compete on a playing field that they're not even allowed to play on. So the suit specifically, or both of them, I guess, point out a specific statement from Apple CEO Tim Cook saying, "Privacy is a fundamental right, and we build it into all products and services at Apple. You should be in control of your data, not the highest bidder." I agree with that. The lawsuit also points to a study from a security researcher that, their software actually is able to study. And they allegedly found that Apple's privacy settings didn't stop the company from collecting data at all. The researchers found that the App Store, for example, continued to harvest information about real-time activity. For example, things like ID numbers, the type of device used, screen resolution, keyboard language, internet connection, and etc. I mean, it also concluded that the Stocks app, that is actually part of the Apple ecosphere, tracked users' list of watch stocks as well. So they're basically keeping an eye on what your investing habits are. Those names of stocks that were viewed and searched for, and they also were able to track what news you were looking at, which is more than a little concerning. So in response to those lawsuits, and again, there's a couple of them here, Apple released a statement saying that identifiable information is never shared with third parties, and it is not used to track users across apps and websites. Well, based on what happened in China recently, with them kowtowing to what the government wanted there with eliminating near-field communication, I would say I don't believe you. Essentially, all data used for advertising purposes is disassociated from personal identifiers, according to Apple. I mean, this is in their statement, so I'm just using their words, their wording. And Apple advertising operates on the basis of de-identified data. That's a word I'm going to have to look up. Sounds pretty made up to me. But the lawsuits against Apple once again shine a light on a growing concern over privacy in the tech industry. And we cover that all the time on the 6 Minute Daily here on the channel. And while companies like Apple may promote themselves as champions of privacy, well, these particular lawsuits suggest that their real goal may be to harvest data and drive revenue at the expense of competitors and, of course, their own customers. Apple's bad behavior, you can check out this video right here. I've got a few of them. Tim Cook doesn't seem to be the greatest guy. He is definitely not the reincarnation of Jobs, not that I think he ever pretended to be. But as we dive further into these stories and I cover them more in depth, I think it's going to continue to raise questions about the true intentions of Apple and, of course, other tech companies, because there are other tech entities out there doing the same thing. Of course, as consumers, we really should have access to greater transparency and accountability in the industry overall. Of course, that includes Apple and also Alphabet and many of these other tech entities that actually have data farms that deal in your data. At the end of the video, I always do the same thing, which is encourage you to take care of yourself and your privacy. Take care of others. Wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene. And until next time,